Okay, time to visualize something, you dweebs. Close your eyes and imagine you are at war. You've always been at war. You are also an anteater? Sort of. Standing a little under 5 feet tall, you are a brightly colored aardvark type of animal that very much wants to be lazy, eat bugs, and sleep most of the day. But unfortunately, your entire civilization has been at varying degrees of war on and off for about 700 years now, so that kind of sucks. Recent advancements in warfare have brought a whole mess of new horrors to the battlefield, but the thing you are currently trying to wrap your mind around is this ferret snakefish thing that is the size of a horse galumphing around and through the trenches. Gloamers, albeit not ones for trench warfare, favoring hit-and-run tactics inside of forests and swamps, do have this monstrosity to help out in the trenches, and it's called a snarfkin, one of those, which is not fun to deal with. Being a member of the Crusaders was supposed to be a moral good, you thought, but that kind of courage comes dribbling down your pant leg when you see this abomination. Either way, you raise your only marginally effective weapon to fire at it as it charges, but luckily, one of the wayward messenger pick squirrels gets in the way, which you are now learning the Sarfkins absolutely love to eat, thus distracting it long enough for you to get a shot off, killing the beast. But unfortunately, your problems are not nearly over, as you can swear you hear the muffled version of whatever this universe's equivalent of Kickstart My Heart by the Motley Crue blasting from inside the ambush of Squeedle tanks that you did not see in the fucking woods behind you. Needless to say, your day is kind of shot, but damn if it ain't gonna be interesting. This is just another day in the world of All White, and a typical battle in the insane world of Quar. Hello, I'm Arthur, and today I want to discuss all things Quar, but also discuss the pure insanity of this game's universe, because at surface level, it just seems kind of off. But when you actually read into the lore of this universe, it is unnervingly in-depth. Like, I'll be listening to lore videos or reading articles from the Rifler's website about the lore of Quar, and it has the same tune of me listening to an in-depth analysis of the political history of a country that I have never heard of. It's kind of fucked. But in that good way, you know? Yeah, you'll know. You'll stay through this, because I feel like you guys like these weirdos. So let's discuss Quar in all its quarry goodness. But before we do, you want some gamer stuffs? First and foremost, what the hell is a Quar? Why do they look like this, and where do they come from? The answer is weird, as I only have a surface level knowledge about where they came from, but even then, brother, it is a rabbit hole. So the individual responsible for this is a man by the name of Josh Quiltieri, and I can describe him best as lovably eccentric. Having met the man in person, a lot of the stories I've heard about him line up well. He's an animated and very personable, very friendly man, and has been working on Quar for most of his life. From what I've heard, he came up with the idea when he was a literal under the age of 10 child and stretched into his adulthood where he wanted to make this as a game, loving tabletop stuff and whatnot. The bro made a war game based off of his ideas he'd been having for decades. But here is the thing, the dude just had his hands in everything as well. Cause like, fun fact fellas, I have a second channel, Arthur After Dark, where I do horror video game essays and I don't know, maybe some like movies at some point. And by my estimate, by the time this video goes live, there will be a new video there. But my editor on there, Teterit, recently released a video a little bit last month on their channel about Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, where does this come into play and why does this matter to bring up? I don't know, maybe because Josh Quiltieri is one of the founding members of Steel Wool Studios, the fellas behind the newer FNAF games after Security Breach, which if you go back and watch, you can see there is indeed a Quar game in their catalog. The Venn diagram of FNAF fans and wargame fans is slowly merging, and it disturbs me. The universe of Quar has been an idea for likely well over 20 years now, if not more. So there is a lot to cover. That being said, I am not nearly the historian for this, so I'm gonna just cover the basics so you know what you want to know and then look it up. I recommend Mishmash Painting. He is the Quar boy. He knows almost everything there is to know about it, and he makes a lot of decent lore and kit bash videos on how to build build your army for this game. So with that being said, what is a Quar? Quar are a kind of reptilian, kind of mammalian anteater type fella who stands 5 feet tall on the high end and are described as kind of just chill, but very proud. They aren't exactly violent, but they do want to protect what is theirs. They are very passionate individuals, so this has led to a lot of conflicts in the history of the setting. They can be pretty much any color, albeit I've heard that green is weirdly rare. I don't know. But regardless, the Quar have a society that is dictated by a monarchical system of nobles and royals who can trace their lineage back to a special individual by the name of Enkidu, who, for lack of a better way of describing, is basically the Sun Tzu and like Christ figure of this setting in a way. He has laid out the laws of warfare and was a great warrior from hundreds of years ago, making it so that war crimes, civilian murders, biological attacks, and poison are illegal, and due to his opinion being so respected, the noble houses, now known as the First Families, have adhered to this code of ethics for as long as possible to the modern day. It's almost become a universally recognized code of conduct when it comes to warfare. There are a bunch of other rules, but the reason this is so important is that protracted siege warfare and infantry battles are kind of the thing where you're not allowed to attack anybody who doesn't have a weapon, you're not allowed to attack civilians, you're not allowed to do anything underhanded. And this is all fine and dandy, but when a war is won over territory or what have you, the winner only takes a few cities from the loser, not the whole country or whatever land they actually claimed. Thus is the law. But there are some cracks in this ideology. Basically, because of all these laws, it does benefit countries in this universe that have more money and resources than others. The most royal of royalists being Kaftir, being a good example. Because they are basically the center of all nobility and have alliances with the majority of every other royalist nation, they have the resource to, while following the rules, just muscle through anyone because they can play the game better than anyone else. It means if you have less resources, unless you are a genuine tactical genius, then you can't really win against a larger army. But this is where things get a little bit interesting, because on the topic of tactical geniuses, there is an individual who saw this exact issue, the problem with nepotistically electing rulers through right of blood rather than merit or democracy. But also the strict code of ethics that needs to be abided by genuinely makes some smaller nations constant targets. This individual is the father of the secondary main faction in the game, which is the Crusader movement, Ali Kinder, and he is probably the second most important Quar in the entire history of the setting. So yeah, let's talk about him. If you couldn't figure out, the first most important Quar is Enkidu, but like we already kind of just discussed him, and there's not much to know other than he made the whatever. Soon Ali Kinder in Vank is his full name, but simply shortened to Ali Kinder, because as much as all of you would say otherwise, I do in fact try to have a bit of brevity in these videos. He was a Quar of myth, born in what would eventually become the largest nation in the entirety of all wide talk. I'm going to be skipping over quite a lot. As I mentioned, there is a lot of interesting lore here, and I don't want this video to be that long. I mean, kind of wanted to. But basically, he was a very bookish Quar, the type to prefer literature rather than good old scrap. He's an example to us all as to how powerful a sharp mind is over a sharp blade. His destiny was the battlefield. He was pushed to be part of the family business and being an engineer of flying machines and doodads, but instead he just wanted murder. Okay, kind of. He's not actually that bloodthirsty. Well, kind of. He's actually just kind of a chill guy. I just want to make jokes, and they're kind of falling flat this morning. Give me a break. But yeah, he joined the Takish army at a young age under a fake name and proceeded to prove that he in fact was still a bit of a nerd. But the thing about nerds is they may not be the best in direct combat, but in regards to strategy, fuck, as any pro Total War player can tell you, is a skill. He was a tactical genius from a young age, which was a good and a bad thing, as it led to him stepping on toes, as he wasn't noble, thus making nobles look bad by proving that nobility doesn't really mean quality. He fought in many different wars and was kind of a key figure in damn near every single one that he was a part of, all of which are cataloged on rifler.com, so feel free to check that shit out. The short end of this is at every turn in terms of politics, Alakinder ended up getting just dicked around, by lack of a better way of putting it, by bureaucratic red tape. So thick and long that it would make, fuck, I had something here. There was probably going to be a dick joke at the end of it. I don't know what is up with me this morning. I feel like I'm just like so all over the place. My God, my train just flew out the window. I gotta stop inhaling spider insecticide before I do these videos. That shit can't be good for me in the long term. Either way, he just got fed up with the political meddling of people who didn't know thing one of what they were talking about in regards to war. This inevitably led to, as it always fucking does in these settings, him growing up fed up with the system at hand. From him being stuck in a POW camp for far too long, from him having his name struck from records of battles that he was a key member of because the Royalists of Talk thought it would make them look bad and him too good. He decided it was time to just burn this system down. After penning a book while in said POW camp, it was considered both heretical and revolutionary. It was called The Principles of Applied Air Power, which he wrote, which was eventually just shortened down to just principles, because the principles of applied air power is a little bit of a mouthful. Basically, he saw that the current laws of this world as arbitrary and punishing those who lack the means to fight back. It kept the royals in power and led to what can best be described as a political bully culture, where the little guy almost always lost. Thus, after a few other steps in between, the loss of a dear old friend, the further political meddling of people who didn't really know what they were McFucking with, he started this movement known simply as the Crusaders. Individuals who believed that the Long War, the concept, where at any one point during the last 700-ish years, there was some kind of grand-scale war going on. It is the product of the systems put in place to keep the royals in power. Thus, the laws of Enkidu must be rewritten, adopting a policy of accelerationism, making it so that he wasn't going to make things better, he was going to push the boundaries of what is acceptable and burn it down, letting the whole system collapse in on itself in order to rebuild a better system afterwards. He wants to use war as a system of governance to end war as a system of governance. Oh fuck, this man is just Senator Armstrong Quar. Okay, that's kind of dope. So, with this in mind, that is kind of the central stage of the conflict today. I'm not going to cover the nitty-gritty of land politics, but basically there is a political split in the world. On one hand, you have the more conservative ideals of the royalists that believe that maintaining a stable peace and conserving what was there is kind of the best way to keep the large majority of people happy, as even though the system itself is a bit stagnant, the majority of people in the world are actually dealing with it quite well and actually able to survive and eke out a very decent existence. There is some high highs and some low lows, but there is the whole corrupt noble thing that pops up every now and then. And then you have the radical progressivists of the Crusaders who believe that in order to build something better, the system has to be burnt down, almost anarchistic in their beliefs. The problem with the Crusaders is that they don't know truly what that better is. Because unfortunately in the modern day, Alakinder passed away, likely from a mixture of health issues and old age, though his death is constantly reported as being mysterious, thus causing a split in the identity of the crusade, with many different new demagogues showing up, one of them being the main leader of a small country that was a part of the crusade known as Mare Breach, their main leader basically rising up to lead the largest contingent of them, which we will cover once we cover the factions of the Crusaders and the Royalists a little bit more in depth in just like a minute. Each of these two overarching groups is made up of smaller armies, countries and all wide that have pledged allegiance to either the Crusaders' cause or the Royalists. Now, there are people who are kind of nonpartisan here, they just don't want to be a part of the war itself, and some people who lean more in one way but don't actually contribute much other than we're not going to shoot you on sight, but those are kind of more just a backdrop of civilians rather than the actual fighting component of the war. I like how in this setting there is not a definitive answer to who is the good guy here. It literally just comes down to what your own ideology is. Do you want the world to be better at any cost and don't fully know what the future holds, but you know that the current system doesn't work? Or do you think that the way things are requires more of a peaceful touch, and sure, you do need to do some changes, but, you know, it's the best that we have right now. Bad eggs are always going to get into places of power no matter what you to do, and just because their daddy was the 32nd cousin of some old Viking Quar, does that mean that they have the right to be in power? Or maybe that is something lesser than that? I don't know. It is fun. There is also, as I have said 5 times now, a whole boatload of political shit that I am not talking about because I am dumb. And if I added the fine details of that, I feel like I would oversimplify it and get so much wrong. But for the rest of the video, I am going to talk about the minutia of the majority of the playable factions, or at least the ones that are the key players for both the Crusaders and the Royalists. We're going to start off with the Crusaders factions, the individuals who believe that the Royalists should be burnt down and it should be more of a, electoral government or whatever. And then we're going to discuss their countries as well as then move into the Royalists. So yeah, let's start with the Crusaders. Starting off, we have Mare Breach, which are probably the second most important factions of the Crusaders, though as of researching them, there isn't much to say other than they are kind of just the Crusaders' echo fighter. Basically, Mare Breach was a country that was to the west of Tak, in the heart of Royalist territory. They were one of the first countries to sign the alliance pact with Tak in order to become one of the first Crusader states. Now, this is important because it meant that mounting a joint offensive with the other Royalists would be tougher, as you'd have to go through Crusader territory to do it. They have numerous port cities, and the most important thing to note about them is after the death of Alakinder, there was this kind of power vacuum that led to the fracturing of the Crusaders. And there was this individual from Mare Breach that, without really consulting many people from Tak, decided to take it under his responsibility, which, okay, big shoes to fill for such a little man, but to be fair, Camprig Loic is probably the one dude in the West who might be able to do it, as he has a strong belief in the cause, albeit seems to not be listening to the people of Tak, which seems to be a bit counter to the cure. What do I know? I'm not an anteater. Okay, let's do Tolmor next. I like Tolmor, as weird as it is to say. I play a Royalist faction, but I identify with the Crusaders' cause more. Call me a traitor if you will, but yeah, Tolmor is a group of very grumpy Quar that the second they were asked politely to join the Crusaders, they simply asked if they got to beat the brakes off of Kaftiran soldiers. Since the answer was yes, they joined. Having some of the best trained soldiers in the setting, the Tolmorese, to my knowledge, are more known for being pretty temperamental than anything else, which I think is kind of cool. Just the idea of a Quar being a passionate and defensive little dude at base was pretty funny, but having an entire country of that one dude complaining that Birmingham was a shithole is way funnier. Lastly, we got Tak. Tak is the largest country in the setting, with borders that stretch pretty damn far, neighbored mostly by Crusader states, unaligned individuals, but also the golden boy who could never bronze, the Fidwag. But Tak is important because, well, it's the birthplace of the Crusader movement, and is kind of the seedbed for the majority of the movement outside of Mare Breach. On to the Royalists outside of that, starting with the obvious, Kaftir. To be born a Kaftiran is to win the lottery of life, or how the saying goes. They are the most royal of the Royalists, usually the height of power, and are known for being some of the best equipped, best dressed, and most stylish people in the world of Quar. It's quite cool. Making deals and working with other Royalists for both materials and trade, the Kaftir are a threat to be reckoned with, as they always have the best technology pretty much at any point in the setting. They have very few weaknesses, but they do have weaknesses, the main one being their arrogance. They often promote individuals by right of birth rather than merit, but also they are surrounded by a massive wall that allows them to feel like they are protected. The Great Wall surrounds the borders of Kaftir, and up until recently had never been breached, but due to the Crusaders' efforts, they were able to put a few holes in that sumbitch, thus shaking things up a bit in the hierarchy of the world. These are basically the main enemy of the Crusade, as they are the symbol of all it means to be a Royalist. The Gwent are the next most well-known of the Royalists. They are a bit hard to describe, but basically they are a colony that exists inside the country of Kaftir, but do have a high degree of sovereignty and autonomy in comparison to other countries of a similar make. They are pretty fancy, as they occupy a mountain range rich with many natural resources. They make quite a lot of money. They are known for being quite cantankerous, like most Quar, but they also are responsible for the wealth that was used to rebuild Koftir after the Crusaders broke their big-ass wall and breached Koftiran boundaries. This is also kind of funny because they gave Koftir so much resources and money to rebuild that there was basically no way that they could repay the Gwent all at once. So they're basically in debt in an indefinite period of time into the future, and this is one of the reasons why the Gwent have such an extreme level of autonomy from Koftir. Last, but certainly not least, the faction I play, the Fidwog. The thing with the Fidwog is they shouldn't exist. Nothing on paper makes sense about them. They're like the bumblebee of the setting. Like, for one, you have them literally on the edge of the map where Talk is, and they are basically just a small sliver of a country that has no real way of communicating with the rest of the Royalists. The Crusade should have conquered them a while ago, but they haven't. Even more so, the Fidwog are small. By Quar standards, they're basically gnomes, shorter than the average Quar by like 10 to 20%, which is hilarious. That being said, Fidwog as a country is rich in mineral wealth and filled to the brim with some of the best Quar engineers in the world. So with that being said, the reason why Tak and the Crusaders can't take Fidwog is because they have the firepower and tenacity to hit and run them until they are so full of holes that if they were to run fast enough, they would whistle. I love these little dudes. They also have throwing spears that explode, which is goofy but fun. I should note this is literally just the surface level of everything in this setting. It is so in-depth and so all over the place with its lore that I genuinely can't do a Quar video without it being like 3 hours long if I wanted to cover everything in depth. If you want a good recommendation to continue if this video has piqued your interest, Mishmash Painting, the Quar boy himself, covers everything in depth, especially how to make your own miniatures, as in kit bashing the current plastics that are out there. I can most certainly promise you, I got something wrong here. Probably a lot of things wrong here. So you should go watch him and just, get corrected on the lore. But to wrap up, Quar is an awesome game. I find the lore is so sprawling and all over the place that it's kind of hard for me to wrap my brain around it. It's just really fun, and in simplest terms, I'm pretty dumb. But I am also enjoying a lot of what I've been reading. I love the game, as it's a fun system to play with a very unique activation system involving cards. The models are amazing. And if you want some, go to wargamesatlantic.com to pick up some, as they're pretty affordable and it's a pretty cheap and easy game to get into. I'll leave a link in the description and in the comments so you can go check them out. No, I'm not even sponsored. I'm just doing this because I like Quar. Either way, let me know in the comments what you think about Quar or if you already play it. So yeah, special thanks to my channel members for supporting me and my editors. With your help, I am able to cover these topics and let my anteater heart sing. If you want to see videos early or even get a bonus few videos each month, then become a channel member today. Thank you all once again for watching. Until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful night.